today we missed an opportunity to work together on all sides of this House, and that's a sad day.
I think we're just about on the time for statements by members, so I think we'll leave it at that and go to déclaration de députés, statements by members, and we'll start with the honourable member for Halifax.
I rise today to recognize 3 young men in my riding of Halifax who are using comedy to break down the stigma of being sick. Jeremy Saunders, Taylor McGilvery, Brian Stever are the creators and hosts of Sick Boy Podcast. The 3 best friends host comedic and insightful conversations with guests living with illnesses like cancer, PTSD, anorexia, lupus, and others. The idea came to them when they observed the unusual and often uncomfortable way in which people react around illness. Jeremy lives with cystic fibrosis and is working to take his positive outlook to the podcast's audience. Sick Boy Podcast made the Best of 2015 list on iTunes, and most recently, it captured the attention of Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield, who appeared on their podcast just last week. We can all turn into Sick Boy Podcast on iTunes or on their website. Jeremy, Taylor, and Brian, great work. You make Halifax proud.
Member for Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry.
I rise in the House today to recognize and congratulate Linda Murpaugh of Williamstown, whose article about Williamstown, the historic village she now calls home, will be published in the Our Canada magazine this summer. While Linda freely admits she's not a writer, she should be proud of that her article will be published for all Canadians to read and hopefully consider a visit to this charming and welcoming community. Williamstown, like many communities across Stormont, Dundas, and South Glengarry, has a rich cultural history that predates Confederation, including an annual agricultural fair that was initiated in 1812. Every summer, I have the honor and privilege of attending the Williamstown Fair, now recognized as the oldest fair in Canada. Each year, thousands of visitors travel to the fairgrounds to take a truly unique country fair experience. And I encourage all of my colleagues to make a trip to Williamstown this summer to do the same. I applaud Linda's work and want to thank and congratulate her for sharing her insights and passion to her community with all of Canada. Bravo, Linda! You're here.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, this is International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. Let's celebrate all the victories this LGBT community has accomplished in the world. We recognize that there are still obstacles to this community, and this prevents us all from building a society that's truly inclusive and egalitarian. Not so long ago, homosexuality was seen as something that was wrong and shameful. Today, homosexuality is no longer viewed that way. Homophobia is viewed that way. We mustn't forget that the LGBTQ community is still the victim of prejudice and daily violence. And many people are still excluded and marginalized because of their sexual orientation, and that's unthinkable. Beauty and difference, Mr. Speaker. Accepting people only makes us better individually and collectively. That's why we can celebrate together the dynamism of this community.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Le Transport de Clare, Nova Scotia's first not-for-profit, community-based transportation service, on its celebrating its 20th anniversary. I had the honour of marking this amazing organization's milestone last Saturday. Depuis ses débuts,
since it got underway in 1996, Le Transport de Clare has allowed seniors, people with reduced mobility, and the economically disadvantaged not only to get to essential appointments, but also to be actively involved in community life all around them.
Thank you to the dedicated staff and volunteers who make the lives of others better every day with this service. And I wish its founder, Clarendon Robichaud, all the best in his retirement after 20 years. It is because of his vision and hard work that Le Transport de Clare is truly a success story that makes the whole community proud. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is an honor to rise today to commemorate the 12th International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. There's much to celebrate when we think about the progress that has been made in this country. From 1979, when Sven Robinson became the first MP to come out as gay, to Bill Saxe, the former MP for Burnaby Douglas, who introduced the first bill to prohibit discrimination based on gender identity and expression. I am particularly honored to pay tribute to the hard work of countless Canadians like Bill and like my colleague, the member of Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke. Your tireless advocacy comes to fruition today, my friend, as we applaud the proposed inclusion of gender identity to the Human Rights Code and to the hate crime section of the Criminal Code. And yet there is still so much to do. There are still too many places where discrimination, persecution, and violence are practiced with impunity. Today, let us pledge to continue to work towards a world where everyone is equal, no matter their race, color, gender identity, or gender expression. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Labrador.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm wearing a seal jacket made in Newfoundland and Labrador in recognition of Seal Day on the Hill. Today we affirm our support for sealers and the sealing sector and acknowledge the importance of the sealing industry to the families who live and work in the northern and eastern communities in Canada. Sealing is not only central to the traditional culture of many Indigenous communities, but essential to their very survival. For generations, many Northerners and coastal communities, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, have depended on the seal for food, clothes, and economic sustenance. Our country is proud to be a global leader in sealing best practices, and our seal harvest is humane, sustainable, and well-regulated. I encourage all members of Parliament to join me and representatives of the sealing industry and community leaders after question period today in the Speaker's Lounge to learn more about the sealing industry in Canada.
Member for Banff Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to acknowledge the leadership and commitment demonstrated by Michelle Bates of Airdrie. Ms. Bates has endured every parent's worst nightmare, the immeasurable loss of a child. Her 5-year-old son, Lane, fell ill and passed away in an ambulance en route to a hospital nearly 30 kilometers away after Airdrie's urgent care centre had closed for the night. What's resulted from that terrible tragedy is a mother's remarkable and tireless campaign to improve health care in our community. Ms. Bates founded the Airdrie Health Foundation to secure 24-hour health care for our growing community. She's brought together numerous community leaders, while the Foundation actively fundraises for a new facility and for medical equipment. Her drive to bring 24-hour care to Airdrie, home to 60,000 Albertans who don't have access to full-time emergency care, serves as a legacy for her son Lane and as a powerful example of leadership within our community. I want to thank Ms. Bates and to everyone involved with the Airdrie Health Foundation for their tireless dedication.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, in 1783, Russia first occupied Crimea, and so began a tragic history of 160 years of occupation and multiple ethnic cleansings of the indigenous Crimean Tatar people. On May 18, 1944, Stalin ethnically cleansed all 240,000 Crimean Tatars to Central Asia. Over 100,000 perished. Amongst the survivors was a legendary Mustafa Jamilyev, who spent 18 brutal years in Soviet gulags for demanding the right of return for his people. 2 years ago, Russia once again militarily invaded and annexed Crimea, and Mustafa has once again been banned from returning to his ancestral homeland. Putin's Crimean terror includes disappearances, torture of detainees, and summary executions. 20,000 Crimean Tatars are now refugees. May 18th commemorates the anniversary of the mass ethnic cleansing and genocide Crimean Tatars, and on this date we will welcome the legendary Majlis leader Mustafa Jamilyev to Ottawa. Slava Krimskim Tataram.
Member for Vimy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had the opportunity to meet people in the Armenian community from the Apostolic Church. They help Armenians here and abroad and try to educate people about the violence that Armenians still face. There was a day of commemoration of the victims of the 1915 disaster, and we need to be thoughtful of Armenians.
Wherever it's found. Reckless bloodshed, is still commonplace in this world, and the pursuit of peaceful resolution to end atrocities and illicit stability requires dedicated actors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise in the House to celebrate people of Elgin, Middlesex, London, and all Canadians. It is during these times of disasters that Canadians show their true compassion and support for each other. This story starts with a member of my community contacting my constituency office for assistance. A generous constituent has stepped forward with a truckload of toiletries to help the victims of the wildfires in Fort McMurray, and they were looking for support to get the goods to Alberta. Adam from Home Hardware connected with my husband Mike, and after a few calls between members of the Conservative Spouses Association and the Bonnyville Fire Chief, a solution was found to transport all goods to Alberta. With the great work of Adam from Home Hardware and the Bonnyville Home Hardware, a store transfer was created with the shipping covered by Home Hardware to deliver all of the goods and additional items donated to St. Thomas Hardware to Alberta. I would like to thank our great community and all the members who have helped the family in our riding, and for all the members in Fort McMurray. I am proud to be Canadian and part of the Alberta Strong movement.
The honourable member for Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every year, 24,000 Canadian men are diagnosed with prostate cancer, and over 4,000 will not survive. 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetimes. However, thanks to early diagnosis and improvements in treatment, mortality is dropping, and 5-year survival is now 96%. However, we have not won the battle yet. That is why on May 28th in Winnipeg, I'll be riding my Triumph Bonneville in the annual Ride for Dad. Across North America, thousands of riders will be holding motorcycle parades through their cities to bring awareness and raise funds for research to defeat prostate cancer. If any members of this House wish to help, I invite them to let me know how they can pledge funds for this great event. Together we can watch prostate cancer ride into the sunset.
The member for Moncton, Riverview, Dieppe.
Today is International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. Please join me in celebrating equality for all Canadians. Today I encourage all of my colleagues to reach out to one another and to promote individuals to be their true selves, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. I had the pleasure of working with different organizations in my riding, such as the Atlantic UBU, a group that is working hard to help support our community by helping students and adults in understanding their journey, easing into transitioning, and supporting their families. A special thank goes out to an amazing constituent in my riding by the name of Michelle Laird, who truly plays a vital role within this organization. I am very excited that our government has introduced legislation that will help ensure transgender and other gender-diverse people can live free from discrimination. Let's provide a safe, open, and inclusive community to all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Mr. Le Président, this week,
Mr. Speaker,
International Maternity, Newborn and Child Health Week. Maternal child, newborn and child health was made Canada's top international development priority by our Conservative government. Through the NHMC initiative, we supported micronutrient programs that ensured millions of children around the world received essential vitamins, vaccines, and clean access to water and sanitation. About 80% of the beneficiaries were women and children. And Mr. Speaker, when women and children benefit, the whole world benefits. We can be proud of the differences we have made in the lives of the most vulnerable around the world, particularly mothers and newborn children. And we are happy that the government is continuing with the groundbreaking development initiatives begun by our Conservative government. So, Mr. Speaker, today I invite all members to attend a reception on Parliament Hill this evening to mark the importance of MNHCH organised by the Honourable Asha Seth and Honourable Norman Doyle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Charlottetown.
Mr. Speaker, Tim and Sally Goddard live just around the corner from me in Charlottetown. Today is a very somber anniversary in their household. Exactly 10 years ago, their daughter, Captain Nicola Goddard, was killed in combat in Afghanistan.
In her memory, Sally and Tim established the Nicola Goddard Foundation, which raises funds for solar lighting systems in medical facilities in Papua New Guinea, where she was born. The foundation also provides scholarships at the University of Calgary and UPEI. Dr. Tim Goddard is still active in Afghanistan, training teachers to help support and consolidate their public education system.
Mr. Speaker, today I ask the House to join me in remembering and celebrating the life and work of Captain Nicola Goddard, lest we forget.
The honourable member for Churchill-Kiwatinuk-Askey.
Mr. Speaker, despite the pronouncements of the Minister to conduct a comprehensive review of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, our study in committee is doing anything but that. We have only 6 sessions to hear from witnesses, no explicit focus on the areas where abuse is rampant, and the committee's proceedings are not being televised despite our repeated asks. But what matters here is that the exploitation of workers in Canada is not being taken seriously. Temporary foreign workers come to Canada to pick our food, take care of our kids, serve at our restaurants, and run our economy. They, like Sheldon McKenzie, die from injuries sustained on the job. Like Eric, that get paid $2 an hour. Like Gina, they are fired when they speak up. They are exploited because of the system that we have created. 40 years ago, workers would have been immigrants to Canada. And Mr. Speaker, as the CLC said, we believe in immigration, not exploitation. Access to citizenship is key. Opposition to the TPP that sets up further loopholes is key. So our message to the Liberal government is to put an end to the public relations exercise and take key steps to end the injustices that take place on our watch.
The honourable member for Selkirk-Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, despite an overwhelming majority, the Liberals nearly lost a vote in the House of Commons yesterday. Unfortunately, the member for Charleswood St. James, Assiniboine and Headingley flip-flopped on his promise to represent his constituents and instead supported Bill C-10. The member for Charleswood St. James, Assiniboine and Headingley.
I want to bring to the attention of honourable members that Statement 31s are not supposed to be used, that we've had rulings from past speakers, are not to be used to attack other members in the House. The previous speaker made rulings to that effect, and that will continue. The honourable member for Brampton South.
I'm glad to welcome the Paramedic Association of Canada to the House of Commons today. These dedicated men and women serve on the front line of healthcare delivery and public safety across Canada and are proud members of the first responder community. From coast to coast to coast, paramedics enrich Canadians' communities while saving people's lives. There are an estimated 33,000 paramedics who care for thousands of Canadians every day. They serve in our municipalities, remote communities, and our armed forces. We cannot forget the daily challenges of their profession and are reminded of this when talking about paramedic wellness and high rates of PTSD suffered by first responders. Mr. Speaker, they are everyday heroes, and it is an honor for us to host them in the House of Commons today. Please join me in welcoming them.
Bravo.
Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, after more than 2 years of study, the National Energy Board will deliver its decision on the Trans Mountain Pipeline this week. But rather than accept independent, science-based process, the Prime Minister wants a review of the review. The last thing Canada's energy sector needs right now is more uncertainty created by more political Liberal interference. But that's all this government has to offer. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister stop creating uncertainty and quit stalling on vital pipeline projects?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the uncertainty has been created by 10 years of a government that refused to understand that you can only build a strong economy when you're protecting the environment, when you're listening to Canadians, when you're building partnerships with Indigenous peoples, when you're respecting the science that surrounds all these projects. The fact is, for 10 years, the members opposite couldn't get it done. We are committed to building a strong economy by protecting the environment at the same time.
That's it. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this was a very thorough review. It involved over 1,600 participants, including local municipality and 35 Indigenous groups. But the Liberals feel there was insufficient reviewing. they added a parallel review so that when they received the independent review, they could review both reviews together. Still unsure about whether this is enough reviewing, the Liberals are now giving the whole process another review. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister stop reviewing his reviews and make a decision?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, the members opposite are demonstrating that they did not understand why for 10 years they were unable to get anything done. The reason they were unable to get anything done is because Canadians lost faith in their capacity to look out for the big picture, to build a strong economy while protecting the environment. We are working very hard, as Canadians have asked us to do, to restore their faith in our processes, in our government, in our capacity to build a strong economy and protect the environment together.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of faith, after months of delays, the Liberals finally announced their process on electoral reform, and it's a sham. The committee is dominated by Liberals, with principles written by Liberals, and the Liberal cabinet will make the final decision. They could not have designed a process that is less democratic. Will the Prime Minister finally commit to giving all Canadians a final say in their democracy by holding a referendum?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, that the members opposite be talking about consultation and referendum is the height of irony, since this was the government previously that rammed through the Fair Elections Act that was designed to disenfranchise thousands upon thousands of Canadians from being able to vote against that government. Well, they failed in that attempt. What we've committed to doing is to consult with Canadians, to engage with Canadians about how to build a better electoral system, how to build a stronger democracy. Canadians' voices will be heard, and we will fulfill our promise of ending first past the post.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Interesting, Mr. Speaker, that there are more Canadians who voted in that election than in the past, so it must be a good work. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate to see that 6 members of the Liberal Party will be the ones to determine the future of the voting system in this country. That's really incredible, Mr. Speaker. The election reform needs to take into account the opinions of Canadians and their ability to choose. Can the Prime Minister promise that he will hold a referendum on this issue? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. We have committed to consulting Canadians, to listen to Canadians who have concerns. And for 10 years, they also had concerns with respect to the way their government behaved. They made a positive choice in the last election for a party that has committed to review and reform our voting system, our electoral system. That is exactly what we're going to do to enable Canadians to have their voices heard, to have a better government. That is what Canadians expect of us. That is what we're going to deliver. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. We have the best record in the G7. We have done well. We will need to see some words and not some action and not just words. It's very difficult to know where people will come from to contribute to this type of consultation. Canadians believe that we need to have a referendum. Will the Prime Minister commit to holding a referendum on this important issue? Mr. Speaker, we made a commitment to do things differently, to listen to Canadians. So talking about the future of our country, and this is contrary to the party opposite that imposed changes on our election system without consulting Canadians, without talking to members of the opposition. We have committed to taking responsible action, to working openly, to building a better electoral system that will better serve all Canadians. That is what we have been called upon to do by Canadians. That is what we will do. Come on. Well, member for Outremont.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice, appearing at committee today, said that the Liberals' approach to legalization would, quote, ensure that we decriminalize the use of marijuana. Once again, mixed signals from this government, while thousands of mostly young Canadians are still getting criminal records for personal use of marijuana. If the government is indeed willing to decriminalize, our question is simple. What the hell are they waiting for?
think the honourable member knows that that is not parliamentary language, and I ask him perhaps he could rephrase that in his next question, but that was inappropriate. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The fact is, we made our commitment to legalize marijuana around two fundamental principles. One, that right now it's too easy for young people to get access to marijuana under the current regime. And secondly, the fact that the funds from the sale of marijuana fund to the tune of billions of dollars criminal organizations, street gangs, and gun runners. That is what our focus is and why we are going to be legalizing, controlling, regulating marijuana to protect our kids and to protect our streets.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
The question is, what in heaven's name are they waiting for? Le gouvernement promet.
The government has promised to legalize marijuana. The minister said today that they will also decriminalize it. So, the question is whether, yes or no, the government will incorporate into legislation a pardon for all people who have currently been convicted for personal use of marijuana. A pardon, yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our commitment is to legalize, to control, and to regulate marijuana was made and based on two principles. First of all, that it's currently too easy for young people to get access to marijuana under the current system. We need to protect young people. And secondly, street gangs, organized crime, and gun runners are making billions of dollars each year on the illegal sale of marijuana. That is why we have committed to controlling, regulating, and legalizing marijuana. And clearly, when we legalize something, we decriminalize something, but legalization and control is what's essential. The Honourable Member for Outremont. And since they were elected, there are still thousands of young people who've been convicted who are going to have a criminal record for the rest of their lives. What are they waiting for to decriminalize it? Jean Chrétien is even calling for that. When they were in the opposition, the Prime Minister marched around Parliament with the Avios workers, and he shouted solidarity, solidarity. And he said it was unfortunate what was happening. So why today is he imposing a muzzle on the debate? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The aeronautic industry is extremely important in Canada for economic growth and also for good quality jobs that it provides across the country. That's why we're proud to be putting forth a budget on Air Canada that will guarantee jobs in Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec for the manufacturing and maintenance of aircraft. We are going to build an aeronautic industry that is strong in Canada. It will be built for the years to come thanks to our commitment. Proud to export thousands of Canadian jobs. Shame, Mr. Speaker.
Closure, stacking committees, whipping votes. Whatever happened to a real change in sunny ways, Mr. Speaker? They are retroactively stripping thousands of good jobs from Canada. He stood in front of Parliament with the workers of Avios, screamed solidarity into a microphone, and now he's letting those jobs go elsewhere. What's the excuse, Mr. Speaker?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Quite the opposite, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to creating the high-quality jobs that the aeronautic industry has always brought forward. That's why we're pleased that this Air Canada bill will guarantee jobs in Manitoba, in Ontario, and in Quebec. This is the kind of good, high-paying jobs that we need as we invest in our aerospace industry, as we build a brighter future for all Canadians. And I'm pleased for the opportunity to highlight what we are doing in terms of creating economic growth for middle-class Canadians and those working hard to join the middle class.
The member for Banff Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Democratic Institutions seems to really love Liberal doublespeak. On one hand, she claims that she wants Canadians to be able to participate in a democratic process. But on the other, she appointed 6 Liberal MPs to rig the future of Canadian democracy. So the only way to truly consult all Canadians is to give them a direct say through a referendum. So will the minister finally drop the talking points and commit to giving all Canadians a referendum?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, over 60% of Canadians in the last election voted for parties committed to changing the first-past-the-post voting system. Canadians want it changed because it provides an election outcome not consistent with the results of the election. It's a system inherited from a distant past, not designed to meet the needs of a multi-party democracy. Many countries around the world have developed other systems, and we would do well to learn from them. Mr. Speaker, it's time for a 21st century model of elections, and we are committed to delivering on our promise to Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, to encourage more Canadians to vote, the Liberals first have to realize that you can't accomplish that by taking away their right to vote at all. Canadians are demanding the right to have a say in a referendum before any changes are made to their electoral system. That right belongs to all Canadians, not to this minister and her 6 Liberal cronies. If the Liberals were truly listening to Canadians, as the minister claims, they would have already heard that loud and clear. Mr. Speaker, why won't they hold a referendum?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, in 1872, Canada adopted a secret ballot. In 1918, women began to be extended the franchise. In 1920, the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer was established. In 1960, voting rights were extended to Indigenous persons. And in 1970, those under the age of 21 were allowed to vote. None of these changes were the result of a referendum. They happened because the parliamentarians of the day displayed leadership and courage. That is the kind of leadership and courage that the members of this House need to display.
I've said before, members on all sides of the House manage to hear things they don't like without reacting. I encourage others to do that. Like the member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston, doesn't react very often, but did that time.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, in a country that calls itself democratic, how can we imagine a government that wants to change its voting system, the very basis of our system, without consulting all Canadians? Here in Canada, each time a province has wanted to change its voting methods, it has used a referendum to consult the population. Mr. Speaker, can the minister assure us that she will do everything in her power to convince the Prime Minister of Canada of the importance of consulting all Canadians through a referendum?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite and his party had 10 years to enhance our democratic institutions and listen to Canadians. We were elected on a promise to bring our electoral system into the 21st century. And Mr. Speaker, while I appreciate that there's an appropriate time for this House to be partisan, I do appreciate that. This is not one of those times. The leadership required from every single member of this House to ensure that the voices of those constituents in their ridings that are not traditionally heard is brought to this House will be paramount, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with all members of this House.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. The Minister is right that the House can be partisan, and we've shown it on this issue. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has already announced that the first-past-the-post system was no longer an option. The Liberals are in favour of a ranked system. The Liberals will make up a partisan committee without consulting the opposition parties. Now, what we've noted today is that the government has already formulated its opinion on this, and the consultations haven't even begun yet. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm for all Canadians that they will have a say in this by way of a referendum?
Democratic institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I have risen in this House dozens of times. Every single time I have extended an invitation to all 337 members here with me to be part of this process, to help us engage with those in their ridings whose voices are not traditionally heard. What have I heard? A call for referendum, and that is all that the party opposite has brought to the table. It's time to turn a new leaf. It's time to put the interests of Canadians ahead of party interests, and I look forward to working with all members to that end.
Member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Democratic Reform talks a big game when it comes to hearing the will of the people. However, it appears that she is scared of actually asking Canadians in a referendum as to how we should elect members of Parliament. First, she delayed forming the committee. Then she gave 6 Liberal MPs the final say in what system the committee recommends. And now the Liberals have ruled out directly asking Canadians for their voice. When will the Liberals stop the games and give Canadians the final say in how we elect members of Parliament?
Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we are committed to doing politics differently. We are committed to hearing from all Canadians across this diverse nation what their thoughts, what their values, and what their aspirations are for our democratic institutions. I look forward to working with all members of this House to put party interests aside and work towards a common interest that serves the best interests of Canadians now and for generations to come.
The member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister continues to push for a fake consultation process that perhaps a few thousand people will be involved in. A referendum would allow for tens of millions of Canadians to have their voice heard. This Liberal minister believes that she knows better than Canadians. Will the Democratic Reform Minister allow all Canadians an opportunity to weigh in on this important discussion by holding a referendum?
Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we want to hear from all Canadians, and we intend to use a multitude of methods, including this special committee, including town halls, for which every single member of this House needs to take responsibility for, social media platforms, and additional processes that work to ensure that every citizen in this country is allowed to be part of this conversation. This is an opportunity to engage those who are not currently engaged in the democratic process. It will require a collective will and effort on behalf of every member of this House, and I look forward to that collaboration.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. 27 years ago, this House committed to eliminating child poverty by voting unanimously in favour of a motion in the name of Ed Broadbent. Since then, however, successive Liberal and Conservative governments have gone around in circles, Mr. Speaker. In a report released today, an alarming situation in this country is described, particularly for First Nations children, who are a direct federal government responsibility. 6 out of 10 children living on reserve are living in poverty. Shame. What will the government do to help First Nations children? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I fully agree with the member opposite. It is a completely unacceptable situation. We must do better. We are convinced that the historic investments in Budget 2016 into Aboriginal communities will help lift a number of these children out of poverty.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. There is a poverty crisis in Indigenous communities across this country, and the Liberal budget doesn't cut it. In Manitoba, 3 out of 4 children living on reserve live in poverty. And this didn't just happen. It is the result of years, decades of underfunding of education, housing, child welfare, health, clean water, and the list goes on. And despite a clear ruling from the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, Liberals still have failed to provide equitable funding for child welfare. So the question is, when will the government drop the delays and increase funding to First Nations in Manitoba and across the country?
Honourable Member for Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the member that this has gone on for far too long, and we do believe that in Budget 2016 that we are making historic investments in housing, in water, in education, and in all of the things that will raise these children out of poverty and do the right thing by these children. They only have one childhood.
The member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my apologies for being so incensed earlier, but the minister insults the 65% of Canadians who'd like to see a referendum when she suggests that somehow this is about taking rights away from Canadians. After years of the Liberals doing nothing to give rights or voting rights to women or to Aboriginal people, Conservative governments introduced those motions. So I don't know if that means that elections are inappropriate because they produce the wrong policy results. Canadians, Mr. Speaker, are smarter than the Liberals think. Canadians know that a referendum is the best and most incisive way of determining the public's will. And Canadians also know that they are not less enlightened than this minister. Will the minister, or will she not, give us a referendum?
Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we are all students of history in this House. It took the collective will of every member in this House years ago to extend the franchise to women, to extend the franchise to Indigenous persons, to be creative and innovative and establish the office of the Chief Electoral Officer. That takes leadership, it takes vision, and it takes a collective effort by all members of this House. I look forward to working with my honourable critic towards that end.
For Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
I'll tell you what takes leadership, Mr. Speaker. It's designing a new electoral system that's good enough that it wins over the support of the majority of Canadians. And I'll tell you what cowardice is. That's the going out designing a system to favour your own party and making sure that Canadians don't get a say so you can rig election 2019. Why on earth does the Prime Minister think he can rig the next election? Why does he think he can do that? Why does he think it is not the right of the Canadian people to decide whether or not the system he's designing is satisfactory?
Now the Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I don't share the cynicism of the member opposite. We need to work together. We need to put parties' interests aside and serve the best interests of Canadians. Every single member of this House now has an extraordinary responsibility, and that is to reach out in their communities to those pockets.
Member for Wellington, Halton Hills will come to order and not speak until it's his turn to speak. Members have very strong views on many issues come before us. There are different views, but most members are able to listen to opposite views without reacting and yelling out. So let's show respect for this place and for the public who elected us and put us here. And now we'll listen to the Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I'm thrilled to see such enthusiasm for the renewal of our democratic institutions. It's time to put the interests of Canadians ahead of our partisan interests. It's time to work together to ensure that our electoral system meets the
Honourable Member for Calgary Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister says that we need to work together in her warm tones, while at the same time stacking the entire process for a Liberal rigging of the process by which we choose this Parliament that belongs to the Canadian people, Mr. Speaker. We believe in government of, for and by the people, not of, for and by the Liberal Party. In her litany of Conservative electoral reforms, she neglected to mention 2005, the PEI referendum, 2007, the Ontario referendum, 2009, the British Columbia referendum. The problem for the Liberals is that those voters didn't give those Liberal governments the answer they wanted. Why not let the people decide rather than the Liberal Party?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the compliment about my tone. Indeed, that is the positive tone Canadians voted for. The member opposite cited nearly half of the population did not vote. Is that okay? Is that acceptable? Or can we use the tools available to us in the 21st century to ensure that those who have barriers that need to be overcome are addressed and heard in this important conversation?
The Honourable Member for Calgary Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, the two-thirds of Canadians who demand a referendum on how they elect their MPs will not be confused by the smugness of this minister. The last time we had a referendum in this country, in 1992, under a Conservative government, 14 million Canadians voted. In a typical parliamentary study, fewer than 100 witnesses appear. How could she possibly think that a process involving dozens or hundreds of people is more inclusive than one involving tens of millions?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite would like to put all his consultation eggs in the referendum basket. I do not agree with this approach. Canadians deserve a more inclusive approach designed to meet the needs and the opportunities of the 21st century. The member opposite and all members in this House need to accept responsibility to ensure that the voices of those Canadians who are not currently and traditionally engaged in this process are heard and reflected in the final outcome.
For Burnaby South.
During the elections, Liberals in places like North Vancouver and Burnaby promised voters that Liberals would redo the Kinder Morgan pipeline review. The Prime Minister repeated this promise and the people of BC believed him. But this week, the National Energy Board will report on Kinder Morgan using the exact same broken process as the Conservatives. The Liberals' new add-on process, little more than a smokescreen, actually does nothing to fix the NEB review process. Why has the Prime Minister broken his promise to British Columbians?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we had the pleasure today to announce the appointment of 3 very distinguished Western Canadians who will spend the next number of months consulting with people up and down the Kinder Morgan line, both in Indigenous and in non-Indigenous communities, because we knew, Mr. Speaker, that the process that has been used so far resulted in no pipelines being built to Tidewater in 10 years. So we then took the decision that changing the process to invite people in, to show them that it has credibility, will give us a better chance than that did.
Exactly. For Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Sadly, Mr. Speaker, the man who ran to be Prime Minister on such bold, progressive promises wouldn't even recognize the politician sitting in the Prime Minister's chair today. Liberals swore on a stack of Bibles to fix the Conservatives' failed environmental assessment process. The Kinder Morgan pipeline is exactly the kind of project that needs a serious and credible environmental review. This is a Conservative pipeline under a Conservative review process with just a Liberal fig leaf hiding over top of that fact. So where are all the BC Liberals that promise to do things different? Will just one BC Liberal stand up today and justify the unjustifiable?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, there are very distinguished Western Canadians who are going to take a little bit of time, not too much time, because the final decision on Kinder Morgan will be taken before Christmas. And that was the promise we made on January 27th when we announced a set of interim principles. We delivered on a very important part of that promise today, and we will deliver a final decision before Christmas.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, yesterday in the House, the Defence Minister showed great personal interest in offering military training in French. Since my election, I've worked hard, and my colleagues will tell you that, to ensure that the St. John Royal Military College has full autonomy in university training, and also to promote French, one of the cornerstones of our Canadian identity. Can the Minister please inform this House of his intentions concerning the return of a university vocation at the college? The Honourable Minister of National Defence. Mr. Speaker, today I have the pleasure of announcing my intention to bring back the university status to the Royal Military College in Saint-Jean.
Mr. Speaker, today I have the honour of announcing my intention to return Royal Military College St. John to full university status. It is a good day for bilingualism in Canada and the Canadian Armed Forces. I look forward to working with the province of Quebec to making this happen. Thank you.
Honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have created massive uncertainty when it comes to building pipelines. Nothing new is being proposed, and current projects like Trans Mountain expansion were proposed because of Conservative leadership created a stable investment environment in Canada. Are the Liberals at all concerned that companies like TransCanada are taking good jobs to Mexico instead of creating jobs right here in Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, we have removed the uncertainty. We have announced a set of principles that will govern this review to restore confidence of Canadians And we've even given a precise date, a certainty of a date and a certainty of principles. That's a lot more certainty than we had from those people on the other side of the House.
The member for Portage-Lisgar.
Now, Mr. Speaker, red tape and political interference is not leadership. It sends the wrong signal to new investment. And in fact, even John Manley said that these Liberals have consultation constipation. When will the Liberals get out of the way and allow jobs to be created in the oil sector?
Natural resources.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has said many times that among the more important responsibilities of the Government of Canada is to move our natural resources to tidewater sustainably. And the only way that will happen is if we have wide-ranging conversations with Indigenous communities, those who want to protect the environment while we grow the economy. We've given to Canadians the certainty of those principles. We've given to Canadians the certainty of a decision by which those principles will be acted. We think we're doing it in a way that stands a better chance of achieving all of our objectives.
Honourable member for Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal excuses for not approving pipelines are getting sillier and sillier. On February 23rd, the National Energy Board appeared before the Environment Committee. When asked about the impact of upstream greenhouse gas emissions on the Trans Mountain project, they testified, and I quote, "The board found that those emissions were not directly related to the project they were assessing," end quote. Yet the Liberals are replacing the independence of this board with a highly politicized and unaccountable political appointed process. Mr. Speaker, why are the Liberals so opposed to resource development?
The Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we haven't replaced anything. We have introduced a set of conversations with Canadians, after which Canadians will say, yes, this has been a fair review according to principles that were made transparent for all, because we believe that if there is going to be success at building major energy infrastructure, that project has to carry the credibility of Canadians, which, for the last 10 years, it has not had.
Honourable member for Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, ragging the puck again. It's critical that Canada build the pipelines required to get its natural resources to market. But instead of allowing independent scientific experts to do their job, the Prime Minister and his Secretary are playing energy politics at the PMO. After years of pipeline applications reviewed by the independent NEB, the Liberals are adding further obstacles by creating a new, highly politicized panel to review these projects. These games are costing hardworking Canadians their jobs. So why are the Liberals putting Canadian firms at a competitive disadvantage within the global marketplace?
The Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, an independent group of distinguished Western Canadians, all of whom will be known to these members, will, along with the regulator, assess the evidence that's been offered by Canadian people, evidence-based through the regulatory process, along with an assessment of upstream greenhouse gas emissions, along with meaningful consultation with Indigenous communities, all of which must be in place if we're going to carry the confidence of Canadians.
For Edmonton, Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, hundreds of temporary foreign workers were forced to leave Fort McMurray because of the fire. They're now living in great uncertainty. They have no alternative income and no family to fall back on. Many have lost their documents, including work permits and permanent residence applications. They don't know if or when their jobs will continue. They don't know if they will be sent home. What is this government doing to help these temporary foreign workers?
Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm troubled by the fact that any citizens, any workers have been displaced from Fort Mac, and the situation of the temporary foreign workers is very dire. The fact is that every employer of a temporary foreign worker is responsible to ensure their living accommodations and their workplace. In this circumstance, those conditions are no longer available. Service Canada is available for each and every one of them, and we will work with them and the employers to find a reasonable alternative. Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, we're worried about the temporary foreign workers in Fort McMurray, but many others in the country are also living their own horror stories. The most recent is that of 4 Guatemalans who've come to work on a farm in Quebec. Because they were afraid of being sent back to their country, they were forced to work up to 22 hours per day and were paid, in some cases, just $2 an hour. What is the government's plan to ensure that temporary foreign workers are not exploited? The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The situation, as we are learning, for the living conditions and working conditions of some temporary foreign workers is completely unacceptable. We have initiated a broad review of the temporary foreign worker program, and any employer that is not providing a decent working situation for temporary foreign workers should be reported to our government, and we will take immediate action, removing their license to ever have temporary foreign workers in this country.
Parry Sound, Muskoka. Mr. Speaker, in the Globe and Mail yesterday, the worldwide champion of the Magnitsky Act, Mr. Bill Browder, called the foreign minister's rejection of the legislation an outright betrayal. He is horrified about why we are lagging behind our U.S. and European allies and not enacting this legislation immediately. Are the Liberals afraid to stand up to Putin and tell him his regime's corrupt officials, murderers and torturers and their blood money are not welcome in Canada?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Quite frankly, the Conservatives did nothing to concretely address the Magnitsky case for the past decade. There are 2 important aspects to understand. Firstly, we already have the ability to ban individuals involved in the Magnitsky murder from entering Canada under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. And secondly, with regard to sanctions, the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development has been mandated to look at our sanctions under the Special Economic Measures Act and to develop recommendations for what else may be required, and I'm sure we all look forward to their report. Thank you.
Parry Sound, Muskoka. We passed it unanimously in the previous Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. President.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Mr. Bill Browder, who was seeking justice for Sergei Magnitsky, said that the Minister of Global Affairs is not taking a strong enough tone with Russia. He's disappointed that the government will not adjust the Special Economic Measures Act, which excludes corrupt bureaucrats, human rights violators, and torturers. Our Act fills these gaps and is supported by members of all parties. In the name of justice, will the minister not join our allies and support this act? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Of Justice, Mr. Speaker, we have made clear the unacceptable behaviour by Russia on many fronts, and we will continue to defend human rights issues. The government has increased sanctions on Russia just this March, and we did that in coordination with our allies, the US and the EU, which is what makes them effective. The motion last year with regard to the Magnitsky Act asked that we explore sanctions, and that is exactly what we are doing under the Special Economic Measures Act. Thank you.
Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Speaker, we don't want to confuse what's happening with Russian aggression in Ukraine with human rights abusers in Russia. Bill Browder has been seeking justice for Sergei Magnitsky for years now, says that the Minister of Foreign Affairs is wrong. He calls the argument from the minister a betrayal in every possible form and is especially deplorable because it involves the appeasement of a dictatorial regime. Our conservative legislation will close all the loopholes. These measures are supported by members of Parliament from all the parties. And does the minister think that he knows better than Bill Browder, Bob Ray, and Urim Kotler?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I think every member of the House benefits by the determination to see justice for Sergei Magnitsky. There's no question about that. With regard to our legislation and our processes, the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act already bans anybody involved in those murders from entering Canada, and our Special Economic Measures Act is being opened up and asked to look at our legislation with a view to what we could improve upon. Thank you.
The member for Willowdale.
Mr. Speaker, this morning the Minister of Foreign Affairs announced that Canada has been asked to join the International Syria Support Group and that he would be partaking in crucial diplomatic discussions currently underway in Vienna. This is the first time Canada has been invited to join this select group, as it focuses on reinvigorating peace efforts concerning Syria and expediting the delivery of critical humanitarian aid to besieged areas of that country. Allow me to congratulate the government and ask that this House be informed what having Canada at the table for such important discussions will mean.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. During the election campaign, we promised to restore Canada's role on the international stage. Canadians should be proud that we have been invited to participate in these Syrian peace talks. Participation means we are better placed to help restore peace and humanitarian aid relief in Syria. That civil war has claimed the lives of 400,000 people and displaced millions. After 10 long years, Canada is being asked for our advice and our involvement. Today, we are at the negotiating table, adding Canada's voice to one of the most important global security and humanitarian crises of our time.
Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the government is risking the lives of our soldiers in Iraq by publishing pictures of their faces. But the minister says that their publication was justified by the defense staff. But the same kinds of pictures authorized by the same defense staff 1 year ago did not show their faces, so this explanation makes no sense. Even less when we understand from the Ottawa Citizen that operational safety was sacrificed on the altar of public relations. Will the government do the right thing and admit their mistake?
Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, the pictures that the member is talking about is the visit that the Chief of Defence Staff made to Iraq. And during that time, there were pre-approved interviews and pre-approved photos that were published. And that's done with the utmost safety of our members in mind. And the difference that the member talks about is no politician was on this trip, and those pictures previously were not authorized by the Canadian Armed Forces to be released. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, not only is the CBC board meeting in secret, now we're learning...
English. Yes, sir.
Because, listen, we've known for a long time that this is a board full of Conservatives meeting in secret that doesn't publish their minutes, and so according to the National Post, it's because of a so-called backlog. But now we've learned that the latest documents concerning the sale of CBC's headquarters in Montreal were only sent out in English. Is there no one steering the ship? Can Canadians count on the Heritage Minister to stop the free-for-all at the CBC board? Please. Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank my colleague for his question. As Minister responsible also for official languages, I expect that CBC Radio Canada will publish its official documents in both official languages and communicate in both official languages. I would also like to thank my colleague for having brought to my attention yesterday the question of the lack of transparency from CBC Radio Canada in terms of the publication of these documents. I will work with CBC Radio Canada to ensure that these documents are made public.
Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, our veterans, indeed all Canadians, were shocked when the former Conservative government decided to close the Veterans Affairs Services office across this country. In my own riding in Sydney, we helped service veterans in Cape Breton and all Nova Scotians. The community was outraged at the flagrant disrespect that the previous government showed to our men and women in uniform. Can the Minister of Veterans Affairs update this office on measures regarding the Veterans Affairs Service Office in Sydney and across this country?
Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has been on me since day one about opening these offices. So I'm glad to report that Budget 2016 is a great one for veterans. Not only will we be reopening the 9 offices closed by the previous government, including in Sydney, Victoria, but we'll be opening a new office in Surrey, BC, and bringing mobile services to the north. This, along with hiring more staff to reduce the veteran-to-case manager ratio toward 25-to-1, will mean better in-person service, including in Cape Breton, for our veterans.
For Yellowhead. The member for Yellowhead.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, yesterday in the House, the member opposite said he was more than happy to have a conversation with me about the mountain pine beetle. Unfortunately, on the ground in Alberta, government employees have been told they can't talk to local officials about this issue. Why are the Liberals muzzling scientists and researchers who are critical to this issue?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment. They're all excited all of a sudden. Now, let's all listen carefully to the answer from the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have to say I do find it a little bit ironic to hear the other side talking about the muzzling of scientists. Mr. Speaker, the mountain pine beetle is a very serious issue. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. Parks Canada is working with the Government of Alberta on a mountain pine beetle action plan that I think the honourable member has actually reviewed that will address not only Jasper National Park but the adjacent areas. Jasper National Park is now finalizing operational plan to support this management plan, and we would be more than happy to sit and go through that with the honourable member.
The honourable member from Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, this is the fourth time that I've asked the government about EI for regions and the black hole. Will the government defend these workers? Well, you know what? By ignoring me, the government isn't just ignoring me, they're ignoring and leaving workers behind. I ask the minister if they will defend their own workers in Gaspésie and des Îles de la Madeleine, as I've been doing, and also on the North Shore. Will the members for these regions of Quebec tell them, their ministers, that this black hole region needs to be fixed?
Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud to say that we have now invested $3 billion for unemployed workers in Canada. Not only is it unfair to suggest that we're not treating workers well, we have come to the table, as promised, helping workers from region to region to region, and we continue to be there for all Canadians.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, we've heard many members of the government talk about consultations. Well, so when it comes to the sale of CBC's Montreal headquarters, the Heritage Minister said on March 29th that she wished to consult with employees, unions, and local elected officials in Montreal, as well as artists, and she said that all options are still on the table. 2 weeks later, a document on the conditions for the sale of the tower is making the rounds in English only, no less. Those consultations apparently went pretty quickly. Were these groups consulted, or is the CBC board still just doing whatever it wants? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. I would like to reassure my colleague, as I did for my colleague, the opposition critic, that we will ensure that CBC respects its language requirements in both official languages. And through the process of the sale, we expect that CBC Radio Canada will consult with various different stakeholders. And I would like to remind my colleague that CBC Radio Canada is independent and there will be no political interference on this file.
Je voudrais signaler.
I'd like to call the members' attention to the presence in the gallery of 3 members of the Tunisian National Dialogue Quartet. They won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2015. Mr. Houssine Abbassi, Mr. Abdesattar Ben Moussa, and Ms. Wided Bouchamawi.
I would also like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of Mr. Bernd Colmel, Chair for the Delegation for Relations with Canada and Delegates of the Canada-Europe 37th Interparliamentary Meeting.
It being 3:07, pursuant to an order made on Thursday, May 12, 2016, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of Mr. Fast relating to the business of supply. Call in the members.
La question est la suivante.
The question is the following one.
Mr. Mackenzie moved that in the opinion of the House, given the importance of trade to Canadian jobs and long-term growth, shall I dispense? No. As well as the government's commitment to strengthen ties within North America and the Asia-Pacific region, A, growing protectionism threatens the global economy, B, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is the best opportunity to strengthen the multilateral trading system and develop rules that protect Canada's economic interests. C, the government should send a strong signal to Canadian businesses and its closest allies that it supports international commerce. D, Canada's position on the Trans-Pacific Partnership should not depend on political developments in the United States. E, the government should stop prolonging consultations on this important agreement. And F, the government should declare Canada's final position on the Trans-Pacific Partnership in time for the North American leaders